Good morning, everybody. My name is John Boyle from Belbin Ireland. You're very, very welcome to our third webinar of the year. And I'm very, very happy also to introduce no relation, but somebody I've worked very close with, Charlie Boyle of Customer Service Excellence Ireland. I'll get him to introduce himself in a second. The webinar will last for an hour, and in the course of that, Charlie and myself will make two separate but overlapping presentations. And in between, we've allowed about 20 minutes for conversation, questions, and discussions. So if, as Rory said, you have any questions, you can click on either the questions section, put your hand up, or the chat section at the end. We will be distributing slides to everybody who attends from both organisations, and that will include contact details. And feel free to follow up, and we will, if it's okay, probably follow up with you to see if you have any more questions or queries. The webcams of both Charlie and I are on, though I'm absolutely certain that's not going to add to the attractiveness of the overall event, but who knows. And if there's anything we can do and you can't give any technical assistance and you want to have a discussion afterwards, equally that's fine. And if there are questions you want to raise that you don't want to raise in public, then obviously you can contact us. Okay, without any further ado, Charlie, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm just going to get these slides up, hopefully. Are they up there, Rory?
No, just the intro at this stage, Charlie.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'll do my slides first. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, my name is Charlie Boyle from Customer Service Excellence Ireland. I'm delighted to be here along with John O'Boyle, and as he rightly pointed out, no relation. John O'Boyle is from the rich Boyle family. There were about 5 of them in Donegal, and I'm glad to see that John has continued that great tradition down there in Clare. So yeah, Customer Service Excellence Ireland, we launched just a couple of years ago, really, 2013. And it's been really good in the time being. We're working with a series of companies, a lot of different sectors and different sizes of companies, because our belief is that customer service is relevant to all sizes and all sectors of business. The link with Belbin is I would say a very natural one, to be honest, because the whole dynamic of Belbin and working in teams, as I'll explain later on, is very relevant to customer service and its success. So yeah, I'm very pleased to be part of this webinar this morning, and I thank again John and his team for inviting me on to that.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. I don't know where the richest is, but certainly you could certainly say that I've lost my Donegal accent in the last 300 or 400 years. Okay, well, what I'm going to start with is a brief introduction of Belbin. Those of you who are regulars will have seen it before, but many of you won't. So that's what I'm going to start with. And that won't be many slides that I'll try and run you through. We'll start with an introduction of the team roles. I'll talk a little bit about why teamwork matters, and a little bit about the performance improvement in teams, which will act really as a bridge to what we describe today as the customer service challenge. And at that stage, I'll hand over to Charlie, who will take you through not only the customer service challenge itself as a wider issue, but also the approach that CSE take towards it. And if there are no questions during the actual webinar, then we'll have some conversational questions at the very end for people who want to keep it back. But as I said, if you do have questions in the interim, fire away. Okay, on to Belbin. A team role is defined by Meredith Belbin, the producer of the original Belbin methodology, as a tendency to behave, contribute, and interrelate with others in a particular way. And it's important to stress what it is. This is not a psychometric assessment. It's not just a simple profile. It reaches to the behavior that you have. It's less about the function you play in an organization, but the way that you tend to behave and contribute to that organization. So you will tend to observe certain ways that people view you and that you perceive yourself in a work environment. And those ways are normally described in 9 different breakdowns.
John, just a second. We've a question from Deborah Walsh. Deborah,
wow, that's very early.
Just going to unmute you. No.
Sure.
Hello, Deborah, do you have a question?
Hello.
Yeah, we can.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi. Apologies. No, I've obviously done something wrong. Apologies. No, I don't have a question.
No, that's fine.
I think
Sorry, I saw the
Not a
hand
problem at
raised.
all.
No, that's fine, Deborah. Sorry about that.
That's fine, no problem. Okay. So as I say, it tends to look at the behavior. Okay. Okay, so the team roles are the next to introduce. And I'll go through these in a small bit of detail for those who haven't seen it before. And rather than do a long explanation, let me do one that really gets to the point in the heart. The plant is the thinking role. It's depicted by the logo of a light bulb. So plants are creative, ideas-oriented people. Their strengths are that they have a pool of ideas that they contribute in a work scenario to a number of different areas. They can often be quite profound and quite deep. And their strengths are that they have a large number of them. Their allowable weaknesses, as we describe them, is that in fact some of those ideas may be scattered, unstrategic, and sometimes completely unsound. But that's not important. They're there to actually deliver ideas to the organization or the group that's there. It's usually others in an organization that will actually do the nitty-gritty of folding and delivering those ideas out. But if you don't have the ideas in the first place, then you cannot always deliver what your organization and team wants. So the word we put there in one word is creative. Unsurprisingly, creative people can often be good designers, strong in an advertising agency, and another area in the arts and the media world. The world where ideas are important. The second team role is that of the resource investigator, and it's depicted by the use of the telephone. Since the original branding was done in the 1980s, you will notice the telephone is of the fixed line variety. Perhaps it should be remodeled to be more mobile and cellular in nature, but that's the way it is. The resource investigator is the person who looks externally to the company for new ideas and new solutions. They will tend to be people who will be good negotiators, enthusiastic, and looking to deliver and drive external ideas from other sources and bring them into the company. Often these are good sales and marketing people. The third team role is that of coordinator. And a coordinator, as the logo suggests, is the conductor of the orchestra. It is they who actually bring together the people in a team and put it to some use. They are motivating individuals, and their strengths are that they tend to make people work with them. Their weaknesses can be that as coordinators, they can tend sometimes to actually pass work on to other people and make sure that the outcomes are precisely what they want, rather than necessarily always what the team wants. The fourth team role is that of a shaper, and it's depicted by the whip hand. The whipper is the person who drives and gets the team to do something. Where the team is unfocused and it needs to really look and guide itself towards the areas that it needs to do, the shaper is the person who can, to be polite, kick ass. The downside of the shaper role is that shapers can annoy people. They can tend to be blunt, sometimes oppressive, and block people from achieving what they need to do. They can sometimes be difficult bosses to work for. The fifth team role is that of the monitor evaluator, and its depiction is of an eye. The monitor evaluators in a team are very, very useful people, but they can sometimes be the least popular of the team roles. A monitor evaluator's strength is to be able to judge and assess and balance situations and opportunities from differing levels. They can point out the strengths and equally the weaknesses of a suggestion and a solution. They can sometimes annoy and irritate people, particularly shapers and plants, who just want to get on and do things, and can often find the contribution of the monitor evaluator cease to seem negative. But a monitor evaluator's role is very important, because if you don't have somebody being objective and able to look at things from different perspectives, more often than not, your very, very good ideas may drown and wither in a sea of false hopes and expectations. The team worker, by contrast, is diplomatic, conscientious, and their role is to ensure that the team functions well together. They are concerned with people working together and the happiness and overall good spirit of the team. The downside to that is that they can be so pushed towards making the team diplomatic and together that they can sometimes miss the fact that conflict's an unfortunate necessity in a team, and they can't avoid facing that conflict and actually tackling some of the hidden issues. Seventh team role is that of the implementer, and its representation is of the wheels, strong doers in the organization. They're organized, efficient, and determined. For them, they need to control. They are leaders, and to the organization can be very important. For them, it's great at all costs. Your implementer is a vital part of every team. They've got to work with others to make sure the work gets done. And if work needs to get done, more often than not, the eighth role, that of completer finisher, is actually the person who will meticulously ensure that things are delivered. The strength is that they are completely dedicated to getting things 100% right. So it is represented by the person putting the final nut and bolt and screwing it into the final delivery. The downside of a completer finisher is that they can be so worried by the need for perfection that timelines and time schedules may not get delivered. It's important to the completer finisher not just to finish, but to finish to high standards. And more often than not, if they're not finished to a high standard, they will let the deadline pass. Finally, the ninth team role is what we describe as the specialist. And Belbin used a spectroscopist, which is a small piece of important laboratory equipment, to actually define the specialist. This is someone who is a complete subject matter expert on their area of expertise. They tend to contribute very, very strongly in that area and are acknowledged masters of fact. The downside is that these people can often be not particularly strong on other areas and can fail to contribute outside that area. So that's a quick recap of the team roles. The team roles are divided generally also into three trees. Next slide, please. The thinking roles, the monitor evaluator, the plant, and the specialist. The action roles, the implementer, the shaper, and the completer finisher. And the people roles, the coordinator, the resource investigator, and the teamwork. We often call this head for thinking, hand for doing, and heart, people. So those three will work together to bring the best support. Okay, that's a quick introduction to the team roles. Just for the last few minutes of my presentation, I'm just going to go through how we apply them in certain different situations. That's a team we all know about. Actually, when you're making a team presentation to Ireland, we wanted to try and find somebody that is absolutely known to everyone. So I don't think any of us living in the island cannot be aware of the strength of our rugby team. And such teamwork really works. I could have put a county team and soccer and various other bits, but this, I think, is agreed to be one of the best teams we've got. But actually, statistically, the most successful team in sport is the next one. The most statistically successful team in sport is the German soccer team. They consistently win and win again. at the highest possible level. And part of the rationale is that they are an unapologetic team. The captain, Philip Lamb, at the end of the last World Cup, produced this quote, which I use in most slides I present, because I think it really puts teams into perspective. You have to have the best team. It's not about the best players. And so often, that's how it works. In a Belbin context, the better team will actually beat the superstars. So regardless of what team you have, if it is organized and disciplined and efficient and coherent and together, it will often outperform the team of so-called geniuses from different angles, because they're thinking about the team first and the individuals second. Okay, so that's enough about teams. The behavior is what we're talking about here. Why teams and why customer service functions behave, and how people within those areas behave. Behavior is a role that most of us know, but in fact it's a combination of many things. The personality of the individual, their mental abilities, their education, their level of knowledge, the experience that they have, the learning that they have within the role they currently take up, the values and motivations delivered to them by their family, by their culture and the background, and their work and job constraints. All of these together lead to the behavior that we can see. And it's that behavior that's measured by Belbin. Those profiles and those roles all combine to see the behavior that we see. Every one of us have those 9 team roles to some extent, some more than others. And it's in delivering those 9 roles that we see our strengths and what we describe our allowable weaknesses. So moving on from team to performance then, most people will work on what we describe as the obvious. If, for example, you're in a recruitment scenario, you're tending to look for people who have the right skills, the right qualifications, the right experience, and can be individually impressive in interview. And of course, that's very important. There's no reason why those things aren't essential. But we'd argue that those alone are not enough. The not so obvious are just as important. The obvious we call eligibility for the role. The not so obvious is something that you don't know until the person joins or starts. Their attitude, their temperament, their motivation and self-start, and above all, their ability to work within a team. There are almost no business positions these days that do not involve people actually working in a team. And so if you're going to get a good feel for people, you've got to look at both the obvious, the eligible, and the not so obvious. Okay. Behavior and performance is what it's about. Teams, and customer service teams are absolutely no exception, tend to start working in different ways. First of all, they will often be seen to be in a working group, in individuals, or sometimes in silos. They move from individual and working groups through teams into what we call the pseudo-team phase, through to being a potential team, a real team, a small group of committed people dedicated to a purpose, right through to being a high-performing team. And I wonder how much each of you can say honestly that the team you're working for lies in which part of that graph. Research seems to indicate that about 80 to 90% of teams are not reaching their top performance. Just as Charlie will tell you about customer service excellence. If teams are being honest with themselves, as customer service teams are, they will realize that they are not getting to where they could be. So tools like Belbin and customer service excellence help them get there. Okay. I conclude by saying that what Belbin is about and I think it has echoes entirely within the customer service excellence approach, is instead of new people and more people, we believe then should be put into turning the groups that work in your workplace into true and real teams. Because that's the only way to get people to perform better. And if you like, to get more out of less. Okay. Any questions at this stage? I finished my sort of the formal part of my presentation. Any questions at all on Belbin and team roles?
Don't think there's any questions here, John.
Okay, fine. Okay, so I'm happy to turn it over to Charlie. Charlie, off you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean, and yeah, very, very interesting. Always good to see that again. I took part in Belbin the first time about 10 years ago in the UK as part of a team. It was in hospitality at the time with Mitchells and Butler, and later I became a practitioner. I must say I haven't used that in training an awful lot, but I'm always very, very conscious of the importance of team and team roles. I'm just going to go through Customer Service Excellence Ireland. That slide's up there, Rory, okay, is it?
We can see that.
Hello, Rory?
Yeah, we can see that. Thanks.
That slide's there, yeah.
It is, yeah. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. Yeah, so my background was in the UK up to about 3 years ago with the groups that are on the slides there mainly. And I suppose the London 2012 Olympic Games, in terms of a case study of customer service, you know, widely known in the last probably 10 years as the most successful customer service approach. London absolutely cracked it from a city that was not seen to be one that could deliver a good customer service through the games. Sydney, up to that, you know, something like 88% satisfaction ratings coming out of the Sydney Olympic Games, and it was in many ways thought not going to be surpassed, but London cracked it, done it very, very well, and a lot of learnings there. I was honoured to be involved with the World Host concept that was used there, and also on the measurement of customer service standards throughout the games as well. And for 4 years before that, I was involved in the London Development Agency, and their task of creating not only the games themselves and all of the other elements that were widely publicised, such as the games, but also of the customer service approach to that as well. And then I suppose with the Premier and Marriott and Costa Coffee groups, an awful lot of measurements. I was involved in measurement of standards in those groups as well, and also very forward-thinking customer service programs. Then I came back to Ireland 2011 and started the early stages of establishing something. Now we didn't know exactly what exactly we were looking at that stage, but in a broad sense, just looking at customer service in general in the country and in every sector, we didn't just keep it to what would be traditionally known as the customer-facing elements. So my belief is that customer service is based on 4 pillars, those pillars being awareness, measurement, training, and recognition. And all 4 pillars being hugely important to a long-term approach to a customer service excellence program within your business or organization. Awareness would be that debate, the great discussion of where are we with customer service. Measurement would be exactly what it says, you know, taking out the measuring tape, whatever that is, creating templates for measurement and measuring your current standards. It's hugely important here that the team or the staff, whatever the makeup is of the organization, that they're also included in being allowed to measure. And there's some great findings from this. The most critical group of all, you could have an external measurement from a company like ourselves, you could employ mystery shopping companies. There's a whole series of external measurements you can get, but it's found again in the last 10 years that the learnings that we get from getting our own staff and management to look at the business critically is of great benefit. And we have several tools of which we're licensed for. Probe for Service Excellence would be the main one that we use with management, and that involves sitting down with management over a 2 to 3 hour period, cross-section of management, and asking a series of questions which looks at the culture of their business, things like their organization, service concept and processes, service value and measurement, and just trying to find out overall what emphasis the management have on customer service. Training is always about using the expertise and the experience of the teams rather than us coming in and throwing out a load of learning. What our training tends to be is around the experience of the team in the room. So it's about the, not we. And we find that the teams get that fairly quickly, and they then start shaping it because they've already been involved in the measurement. So let's say they've sat down and they've measured their performance in customer service at 72%. Well, we'll explain to them that 72% is not good enough. 85% and above consistently is where customer service excellence happens. So the training, if it is at 72%, will be to see how can we get from 72% up to the 90s or the high 80s, and the team and the experience within the team, and that experience can be good, bad, or indifferent experience. We use that to, and yes, we have elements then of the licenses and the knowledge that we have to create this mix. Recognition being the final one, but a very important factor as well. So if we don't have recognition coming out of training, the training can fall flat. And we all have been at training where you're on a high on the night, you think that's fantastic, you leave the training, and within weeks, if not days, the performance goes back to what it was before. So the key part at the end is to have a recognition program which is ongoing, and it supports the training, and it gives the training an objective and a target to aim towards. That recognition could be individual recognition of team members who are performing at an area of customer service excellence. It could be the team customer service excellence that has to be recognized, and the recognition can look like a variety of factors, and that's to be worked out as well. Key thing about recognition is don't start recognition until you know you're going to carry it on, because the worst thing you could do is have recognition for a couple of months and then it stops, because that will give an unimportance. It'll undo all the good work that was there. So as I say, we launched in March 2013. It's endorsed by Enterprise Ireland, which is great to have a government agency come in and endorse the programme, and we work through those. We work through the organisation with that as well. Some of the companies, now this wasn't updated for the last few months, and we've some exciting companies on board since that, but they are some of the companies we have been working with, and they're happy for us to allow those names onto the slide. There'll be other companies, of course, that through privacy agreements we won't quote or mention for obvious reasons. Staff training, Joe the Butcher up at the top of the slide there. Joe the Butcher had 17 butcher stores. He was very involved with Asda in Northern Ireland and in the UK. Came back, re-established, started off, rebranded. It was McGee's, now it's Joe's Butchers again. And he's starting off another series of butcher stores. I think he's up now to his 4th. And Joe would have came to me about 2 years ago and said, we've got fantastic product and produce. I'm not too sure about our customer service. And that's a key factor, regardless of the fact that it's Joe the Butcher. If you think of a software company, if you think of a county council, a public sector, the product can be fantastic that you're selling. It could be, a lot of focus put on the product or the produce, but sometimes we're taking our eye off the ball of the service of that product or produce. And that's really what Joe was saying in that. So that was actually an interesting one for us. Joe, in all of his stores now, has achieved the customer service excellence, and he's very quick to come back to us and say, having excellent product and produce is not enough. We must have excellent customer service as well. And he's had the busiest last 3 or 4 years in the last 4 years than he's had in 15 years of business, and albeit, of course, in the recessionary times. On the bottom left, possibly as you're looking, is the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. Again, great focus on customer service there, and another training picture at the bottom of an Arivo group recently in Sligo. Educational training, Sean Riley, who's one of my partners in the business, has been focusing on educational training, and we sort of went into this by default. What we found is that the transition year groups, when they were going out and work experience, there was no program for them before they went out on their work experience, and now we're in with a program, a one-day program before they go on their work experience, and the feedback from the employers has been very, very strong indeed. You know, a lot of the employers have been taking on TY students for the last 15, 20 years, and what they're saying is that since we've introduced our programs into the schools that they're introduced to, that the students are coming out much more focused, and in fact we're finding that they're being offered summer jobs where in the past they hadn't been, simply because they have a focus on the customer service and on the customer while they're out there in work experience. And young people can often be disregarded for, oh, they're not socially engaged, they're a PlayStation generation. We don't believe that at all. They get it. They get customer service very much. So the accreditations and endorsements we have are on the slide in front of us. Obviously, the Irish Institute of Training and Development, fantastic body to be involved with, the International Standard for Service Excellence, and the others we see at the bottom. Okay, so where does this all work in with Belbin? And I think, you know, John gave a fantastic overview there of Belbin and the dynamic of team roles. Our findings, and my experience, and it came about in the early 2000s, 2001 to 2003, when we were doing measurement with the Marriott Hotel Group in particular. And at the same time, we were measuring Premier Inns. Premier Inns in the UK, made famous by the Lenny Henry ad, the fastest growing hotel group in the world at the minute. All you need for a good night's sleep is their sort of strapline. What we found with both of those hotel groups was that most, if not all, could get to this 80% satisfaction. So if you think of the figure of 80%, let's not think of 80% if we were doing an exam or a leaving cert. If I got 80% in a leaving cert, I would be over the moon. I would think that I had arrived. But 80% in customer satisfaction is not good enough, because most people can achieve that. And what we found is that most of the hotels that we were auditing, in a customer service sense, most of them were achieving 80%. The exceptional hotels were achieving over 85% and into the 90s. And when we looked at this to find out what were the key areas that those who were performing at this high level were achieving, it was that they had stronger teams, and that their internal customer service, and this is a key word in the last 5 years in the language of customer service, their internal customer service was performing at a much higher level than the other hotels who were achieving 80% and below. So is the team factor and the internal customer service key to the delivery of customer service externally to the customers who are paying? Yes. And the strong belief, you know, through our training programs is there's a great emphasis, we place a great emphasis on the fact that internal customer service must be working before we can get to this high quality level of customer service excellence, and the percentage to be 85% and above. So what can we use? We can use the Belbin approach here. We can obviously collaborate with John Boyle and his team with organizations to ensure that their teams are working at a much better level, and that level of respect actually assists the internal customer service, because very, very often the person who's taken for granted in a customer service sense are the internal customer. The internal customers tend largely to be the staff, work colleagues, but there's also other elements. It could be the suppliers. Suppliers sometimes are taken for granted, and we think, well, they should be kind to us rather than the other way around. But suppliers to any business, and it could be a stationary supplier, it could be the supplier of the raw material, it could be the supplier of the produce for food industry. The suppliers are key, and they're a key element of the business. So yes, that must be working at that level first. So that finding from the work with the Marriott and the Premier Inn hotel group was significant. And we're finding that more and more in our day-to-day work is that internal customer service must be working at a very high level before we can get that success and sustainability long term. So Belbin in this regard makes total sense, and using Belbin, and it doesn't have to be always in larger organizations, because although John went through the 9 elements of Belbin, the 9 characteristics, that could be 2 or 3 or 4 people, and each of those with 2 of those characteristics. Measuring standards, we believe, is key. Quite often we will get telephone calls or through our website, again, Sean O'Reilly, my partner in this, would consistently get, maybe 1 inquiry a day. And what tends to happen is that it's mid-management asking us, can you come in and do staff training? And you might think, okay, that's fantastic opportunity there to go in and do the staff training, but we try not to do that, because going in and just doing staff training of a Wednesday evening for 3 hours will have and you might think that I'm talking against what we're selling, but that's exactly how we feel. So if we took that staff training alone from somebody in middle management who is asking us to go in, and we go in and we get them very motivated, and we get them leaving the room thinking that was a great session, where does it go to? Because first of all, we had no measurement of the current standards going into that training. So we didn't know how good, bad, or indifferent the customer service standards were with the company or the organization before we went in. And if we go in and do training in that regard, where does the training go afterwards? If there's not a recognition program in place, the training will simply fall flat, as I say, within weeks, if not days, after we leave. So therefore, within a couple of months, somebody will refer to the customer service training that we delivered, and they'll say, it wasn't very effective, was it? So in that regard, we tend to try and achieve a customer service program with the organization as opposed to customer service training. And if we go back to one of the initial slides where it talks about that program, and the 4 pillars would be based on awareness, measurement, training, and recognition. So measuring the standards is a key part. And when we have the standards measured and an agreed score in percentage term, we are quite happy at that stage then to proceed into the training element of it. So what is the training, and what does that look like? It's about the team and their experience. So again, we go back into Belbin. And when we talk about the team, we don't talk about the staff as such. The team includes senior management. So with senior management, we would use the Probe for Service Excellence, which is a tool we have. And that's a best practice benchmarking tool. It's used now in over 30 countries in the world to promote the pursuit of customer service excellence. And many businesses are using this. We're very pleased to be part of Comparison International in the UK. And it assesses today's position and a snapshot of the current state of the organization from a managerial perspective. And it's named Probe for a very good reason. So it probes the business, and it looks at how the business is managed. So if we then get down to the staff training, we would ask the staff to come up with how they're performing, how they self-analyze their performance, and we would write out a template for that. So we introduce that to the training. It's a balance. The training itself would be a balance of new information and the team's experience. Because if we went into a training workshop for 3 hours and we spoke for 3 hours and told them what they needed to do, they would switch off after 20 minutes. That type of learning, as we all know, is no longer in vogue. So it's about drawing on their experience, good, bad, and indifferent, and allowing them to help shape the training and the improvement. Recognition, again, as I say, is key. It can be individual or team. It's about catching great performance and recognizing it. And the word of warning is only start it if you're going to implement it consistently. Because one of the questions we tend to get quite a lot is, what type of recognition should we use? Should we use cash reward? That tends to frighten companies, especially the financial people, when we talk about the term reward and recognition. Disney have removed the term reward and they just use recognition now, because it is found that recognizing somebody's excellence is of greater value than any reward we might come up with. So a €50 extra or €100 extra is more than likely going to be used to pay an electricity bill or a part of a mortgage or a car payment, and it may not be of benefit. But recognition in front of their peers is huge, and it has a great effect. And it's the glue that sticks the program together in many ways. So in terms of the Belbin approach and using the team dynamic that John explained, it has to be a holistic approach in any business for it to succeed. And we don't talk about top down or bottom up, we just talk about the entire business must set out its vision for better customer service. And if that's set out from the whole of the company, it's much easier to work in that area. And we have one very good example. It's a cooperative, a very large cooperative, one of the biggest in the country, an agricultural cooperative with over 700 employees. And they approached us 2 years ago and made it very easy for us to go on and to pitch for the work. Because what they said is that one of their 4 pillars of growth was excellence in customer service, and that they saw the vision for all areas of their business. And their business includes retail stores, it includes consumer foods, livestock. But for all of their employees in the entire cooperative, they wanted a program of customer service excellence. And that didn't come from part of the team, it came from a cross-section of the team. And that made it easy for us to go in and say, okay, well, this is our program, these are our 4 pillars, let's lay one over the other and see what we can do. And 2 years on, we've had some great results, some great feedback from them, as recently as days ago, where they're now saying is the impact of the customer service program is now impacting on their sales in a positive manner. Because customer service is sometimes seen as soft skills, but there's hard bottom line results from it. And I'll just conclude by saying this, is that sales is a continuation of excellent customer service. It's not something that you put in when you're successful or when you're struggling. If we get the customer service element right throughout the whole of the organization, the end result is better sales and better profits because you're working leaner and more efficient as well. So that I suppose is the customer service program that we're offering, and we're open to any questions. And John, I'll hand it off.
Okay, thanks very much, Charlie. That was excellent, and I saw immediately the link there between to get a customer service team through that and up to a better level of consciousness. Then working on their team dynamics is absolutely essential. But equally, knowing and understanding strengths and weaknesses is also. And I think the two are natural partners. Now, are there any questions?
Yeah,
that anybody has for either chapter?
John, I have a question from Sandra Dunn, and she wants to know how do you explain the return on investment to new clients?
And is that for Charlie or for myself?
Sandra, I might just...
or what do you Sandra, unmute her and let's see.
Yeah. Sandra, is that for John or Charlie? You can speak now. Or else you can type to me. She might be having issues with her audio. I'm not sure. Maybe one of you want to take the question.
Yeah, if I can, I'll have a pop at it first, Sean.
Sure.
It's always something that somebody wants to see, and it's always something that we should use when we're sitting down with a company to try and outline as best as possible what the return on investment is. Because yes, there is an investment, there always will be. I think John alluded to it earlier that in terms of cost, using either approach, using a customer service program or Belbin or both, is relatively low cost in terms of the investment and the improvement that it can achieve. The only one that we know of is, and again it's from our experience and trying to pull from the company after we're in for a while, okay, this is working well and the customer satisfaction is improving and customers, the loyalty is improving. What impact is this now having on sales? And that always has, that's always a key question, but it always has other areas as well. So if we take farming, for example, if we ask that question at the wrong time of the year, and there's, let's say it's very, very poor weather, and that affects in a negative way farming, well, they could say to us, well, the last 3 months haven't been too good. Likewise, it could be in the food or the fishing industry, it could be seasonality. We need to watch all these other elements. The best measurement of all was again with the Marriott and the Premier Inn hotel groups, where they related a 1% increase in customer satisfaction to a 1% increase in sales. So if they were performing at 85% and they moved up to 87%, there was a correlation of sales there of 2% increase as well. So when we do surveys, as we regularly do with customers, they will always have customer service in the top 3 of why they do business with that particular company. Now, if it's in the top 3 in terms of importance, it must be in the top 3 in terms of priority for the business to have that in place. But is there a measurement which directly correlates sales growth as a result of excellent customer service? No, there isn't, because every business is obviously different in that regard.
Okay, I'll go in on that, Sandra, if I can. Thanks, Charlie. The simple fact we would make is that there is no team out there, none, sporting team, charity team, not-for-profit team, that cannot be improved. And customer service is one of those excellent measurements that actually makes that case. Let's look at it the first way. The first way is, if you have a team that's aware of its strengths and weaknesses, is aware of its objectives and commitments, and is totally unified towards making its solution, it's going to sell more. It's going to deliver better. It's going to outperform those that don't. So that's the first point. Normally, we would say that you would get between a 3 and 5% increase in sales and measurable outputs by having a balanced team. And there's some research from Glasgow that we can go through with you on that point. But secondly, consider it the other way and ask everybody on this call to look themselves and say honestly if they've ever worked on a team that's not performing, that's malfunctioning, where there are rows and dissensions and difficulties, where there are politics and where there are issues. And think honestly, how much has that impacted negatively on that team's ability to deliver? So if you have a team that's not right, that's not focused on the right goals, is not going in the right direction, the damage can be absolutely incalculable. We would go so far as to say that your effectiveness is impeded by between 25 to 30%. You're simply not focusing on the things that you need to focus on. The sector is irrelevant, the area is irrelevant. So a small customer service program or a small Belbin program, is going to cost most organizations a few £1,000s, and the difference it can make is massive. So I would say very clearly that In fact, I would be prepared to guarantee that you'll get a return on investment if you actually put it in and apply it. The one thing I would say, though, which is common to both Belbin and customer service, getting it in, as Charlie said, whatever the program is, implementing it is well and good. The key, I think he would agree with me, is delivering it and consistently maintaining it. Don't just take the learning and the exercise and file it away in a cupboard. Use the team role profiles, the way people work with each other, use the customer service measurements he has. And you've got to be ruthless in implementing that. And you've got to be consistent, because when the likes of Charlie or I are away, that's when things are likely to fall down. You've got to have somebody who's truly prepared and committed to implement these programs to make successes. I'm sure you'd agree with me, Charlie, on that.
Absolutely, yeah, very much so, John.
Okay, Sandra, does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
But no, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
that's
Sandra.
great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
Okay, anybody else with a question? Okay, Charlie, I'll throw one at you. If you were to set up a customer service program, what type of organizations and bodies are ideal for doing this? Or are there any sectors that are not ideal?
No, there's certainly the second part of the question. There's no sector that's not ideal, because customer service is relevant in every sector. One of the challenges that we have had, I suppose, John, in the last 2 years, is that the queries we've been getting have come from every sector. And I suppose you might think, with the background that I have, is that I would stay within the hospitality area, tourism, and we have that. We're delighted to have, for example, the great team down at the Cliffs of Moher, Ireland's busiest visitor attraction centre of natural dimension. Over 100 staff there now at the minute, and we've been there for 2 years, both measuring and with training workshops and improving customer service. They would tell us that's what's happening, and improving satisfaction. But likewise, an interesting thing's happened, I suppose, in the last 6 months. Software engineering have become an area that have made a lot of inquiries. Now we have one particular one that's working well, I suppose, in that area, and that may be reference, and maybe it's a small community, and that's sort of feeding out from that. And what we're sort of saying there is that, in general terms, the focus, we think back to Joe the Butcher, the focus in software very often can be on the product. So the perfection of the product and how well it's working and the role or the job that particular product carries out. But some of the software companies that have made the inquiries have said, but maybe our service of that, maybe the installation of it, maybe our customer service and getting back to customers, maybe we're not thinking like the hospitality or the tourism sector. We don't see the people element. No. So we're involved with proposals and programs in that particular area. So software engineering. Healthcare is another area that more and more we see opportunities and inquiries coming from as well. And healthcare, sometimes the focus is on the clinical assessment in healthcare. So finding out what is clinically wrong with the patient. But what about the care of the patient? What about making it easier for car parking, for access, for looking after a person that's coming out of a rural setting, going into a town at 80 years of age? So there's a customer service element to that as well. And it's important to measure and to train and to recognize when we get it well. So the sectors are very, very varied. One of the challenges to us as a company, and although we have lots of experience in terms of a business, we're also a startup. So what we need to be careful about is that we're not all things to all people, and that we specialize maybe in 5 or 6 of those sectors. So that's exactly what we're doing this year, is that we're concentrating on 5 or 6 sectors. Software and engineering being one, healthcare, hospitality, the food sector, which is again an exciting one for us as well, because within the food sector, the focus very much can be on the perfection of the food. We're talking about food for export, And we have a very exciting time now with the lifting of the milk quota, the beef quota, the beef embargo into the States has been lifted. So there's a need for a customer service program there. But within the country, within tourism, then there's areas like transport. The transporting of passengers isn't all about the bus or the plane or the train being on time. There are other elements to that as well that can enhance the customer experience and want people to use that mode of transport as well.
Thanks. And I would say I'm looking through the people who registered this seminar. And it's a wide variety of areas. Everything from the horseware products, Val Kennedy, through to customer service, health. There is no team and I would also include, if you're a professional service or coach or consultant, if you have a team of any sort, then looking at the team and putting a small amount into making that team better will repay it 100-fold. It really will. It just will make the difference. Okay, we're coming towards the end. Are there any further questions before I close, or comments indeed, or criticisms? I'm wide open to have those from anybody listening today. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance. We will be contacting you with a copy of the webinar and a recording of the tape. We have webinars every month or 2 months, and we'll keep you registered and interested. If you want to contact either Charlie or myself, our contact details will be on the documentation that you receive. And if there are no further questions, I'll proceed to close the meeting. Okay.
Thank you.